Hey everybody, it's Bust with Battles with Bust number 404, and today we're going to be doing battle with Blue Gwen. But before the battles arise, before the overwhelms begin, new cards have been spoiled, new cards have been released. Let's go ahead and give those a little chit chat before we jump into the gameplay action. And so it's going to be two sets of cards that have been released since I made the last video. I don't think it's the end of the kind of variety off main faction sets of things that we have throughout the remainder of the way. I believe there's still two more champions that are due, but it's a big chunk. I think it's like four factions worth of cards that are out here. Glad to come in and talk about them. And so, Rejuvenating Breeze, I can tell you with certainty we will never be playing this card, but this one strikes me as being highly playable and highly powerful as we see things like drum solo make their way at a very similar price point. The thing that has made coins out of Ionia, the draw two make some coins thing, sees a ton of play, and I keep wanting to call it deep analysis. I know that's a magic card. The other Ionia one that's really popular right now. This is why we never play with this stuff, man. I just don't play Ionia. I hate all these cards so much. But the one that draws two spells and flows to cost two less. All of those cards exceptionally playable. I don't think Rejuvenating Breeze is any different, and it's arguably more powerful than all of those cards with this heal attached to it, especially if you're playing something outside of Karma Set. And so Karma Set really enjoys having access to those coins, but if you don't incredibly care about the coins, the Rejuvenating Breeze is going to be quite powerful, something that you're definitely excited to play about in Ionia. So fairly straightforward evaluation there. Up next, we have a fairly interesting card coming from the lands of Ionia, the All-Seeing Oracle. It's a 4/3 for 4. When it comes into play, you are shown 3 spells from the opposing deck. You create a card in your hand called the Carvings of Divination, which then allows you to counter that spell for 1 mana. And so, a very powerful thing here, very strong, especially if you're in the lands of Eternal, playing things like Feel the Rush or Buried in the Ice, just one of these big, meaty 12 or 13 cost spells. Having a direct answer to it coming out of Ionia is pretty interesting. And so, I'm pretty curious with this card. You would look at this and think that it's typically going to land in more of a control-y style structure, right? You're saying, oh, right, well, we're playing a slightly understated unit with this counterspell thing attached to it. That sounds, like right up a control deck's wheelhouse. But I feel like this is something that's probably going to have a better fit in like a tempo deck, as to where you're trying to be aggressive with your Irelias or your Greenglade duos, or however you get aggressive with Ionia, and then you are looking to be able to stop the Ruination or stop a Feel the Rush just for that singular point of mana, to where if you're playing a slower deck, you'll probably just have Deny by then anyways. And so very interesting, very powerful. It does add a lot of weakness to those just really big, spell hungry, high powered spell decks. And I'm curious to see how this one actually plays out. Again, another card that we'll probably never play, but it's something that we're certainly going to have to be aware of, as we do enjoy casting a big spell or two, or as a little foreshadowing, we might want to summon a dragon before you know it. But continuing on up to the Necrotic Arachnoid, with this, I completely forgot that like spiders and yordles and all that shit were a sub-faction, right? As the kind of zoo theme comes out of this set, Riot has really put forth the dogs and the cats and the birds and the reptiles. I just straight up forgot about all this other stuff. And so it's quite interesting in this land of having access to spiders and caring about subtypes, access to the Yordles archetype and caring about subtypes. Lots of very interesting and powerful things there. But as far as the Necrotic Arachnoid goes, when it comes into play, it summons 2 Necrotic Nestlings. These are 2/2 fearsome units. They have the spiders tag as well. And then it does the drain effect whenever an ally dies. Now with this, I think it's probably just too expensive for what it does. Like, I think the kind of easiest comparison to the Necrotic Arachnoid is going to be something like the Nagakaboros, right? A big, fearsome, meaty 8-cost unit that doesn't immediately win you the game, but the Eye of the Nagakaboros does end the game quite quickly, and it does get the big tentacle surge going fast, to where the Necrotic Arachnoid doesn't seem to do quite as much. The problem that I kind of have with the Necrotic Arachnoid is a lot of the spider theme is very aggressive, right? So you're looking towards Elise. You have the 3/2 fearsome spider. Then you have the 3-cost spider that gives your spiders plus attack and your opponent's neg attack. This is all leaning towards like a very aggressively styled deck to where the Necrotic Arachnoid is kind of a big control deck game ender. And so maybe there is a space for it in those kind of classic control decks that would do stuff like play Brood Awakening, but just use it as a defensive blocker. And you can get kind of the same thing happening with this Necrotic Arachnoid, where you just play a giant dude. It can come down and block your opponent's 6/6, no problem. You get the 2 little blockers going along with it, and then maybe it gets to drain for 3 or 4 points of damage across the game. And so, in that idea, in that vein, it probably has something going for it. Or if it's a card that you can generate off of some of this subtype themes, maybe that's interesting as well. But I don't think it's going to really fit in the current iterations of Spider's deck. And so it's not to say that there won't be a Zoo-style deck coming up to where this is relevant, but I think this is probably just like a generated card or something to where those really slow and grindy Shadow Isles control decks are just looking for a big late game play at the end of the day. So here's the Necrotic Nestling if you want to see it real quick. You can't actually include it in your decks, but it's a 3/2 fearsome. It doesn't have the spider tag on the image here. That's interesting. I would have thought that it would have guaranteed to have been having it, but not there. Interesting. On to the next one, though. Sacred Shears. This gives a unit the Gwen ability to where when you attack, another ally gains the power from the Hallowed. And with this, I'm not super impressed, but I think as we even expand into playing Blue Gwen today, you have to be kind of respectable of this really high-powered stuff that can happen in terms of the Hallowed attacks. And so we talk about Blue Gwen in the sense that you're able to put that Hallowed attack bonus onto an Overwhelm unit and then crash in. And so if you're getting that Hallowed attack bonus onto your leftmost Overwhelm, onto another Overwhelm, and onto Gwen, that is a ton of power actually coming through. Or if you're able to find a usage for this, say how you used to have the classic Red Gwen decks with all of the rallies in it, and getting this ability multiple times across the same turn, you might have something there as well. And so I'm not super amped about it. I feel like there's enough power getting divvied out just on the strength of Hallowed alone. But if you are finding those situations to where you can start making multi-attacks and the like, does have some potential for some win more power there. Up next, the Swindler's Den. This one's kind of interesting. And so this is the kind of card that I typically hate. I think that there's probably a fairly safe space for the Swindler's Den now in the current format. I wouldn't be surprised if we get like a year or two down the road and this thing has to be like nerfed or banned or something. But as it stands right now, I think it's probably in that safe space of just being safe, given the sense that you don't get to do a ton of game planning with this, right? And so if you're looking to play a card like Back Alley Bar, you get to put the bar down, you've spent all of your mana for the turn, then you get to roll into the next turn and really pick and choose how you use that cheapness onto all of your new cards, to where with the Swindler's Den, you're going to be discarding your hand and then you have to really kind of pop off with what's ever on the top of your deck. And so I think you really have to kind of find yourself in a spot to where, as you look at a deck like the Aatrox Reaver's Row style decks that were like Aatrox, a bunch of equipment, 2 Zolanis, and then just like 30 dudes that cost 1 mana, I could see the Swindler's Den kind of working in something like that. But the big combo finish, the big combo kills, I don't quite see that happening just yet with the Swindler's Den, unless you start to come up with new ways to make the rest of your cards cheaper. And so like whatever that dumb Ionia card is, this is the way you describe all of the Ionia cards, right? Just it's some dumb card we're never gonna play. But there's that dumb Ionia card that halves the cost of all the spells in your deck while having lifesteal. Like abilities like that tied into the Swindler's Den can get you into that space of big combo kills. And so I'm curious to see how that goes. Otherwise, having your kill package be a bunch of stuff like Warning Shot and Parlay and just a bunch of like really cheap burn, it doesn't really strike me as being a possibility. And so it might be something to where your burn deck plays like one copy of it, and it's just like your big ultimate trying to finish the game kind of thing. But as it stands right now, I'm not foreseeing a big build around combo style deck for the Swindler's Den. Hopefully I'm not proven wrong on that. That deck will be miserable to play against. And so up next, very interesting one in the Siren Song. 4-cost spell summons a husk. Then you grant your 1-cost allies everywhere +1/+1. And so as we were just talking about the Aatrox Reaver's Row deck, this is a card that doesn't necessarily have to be played with just Elise, or with Evelyn and the Husks theme. You can come up with some interesting and nice ways to take advantage of this 1-cost allies everywhere, get some kind of bonus, whether or not that is playing the 1-cost matters theme coming out of Bilgewater, finding some way to use Daring Poros with this to give them all the bonus attack. There's plenty of ways that you can take advantage of this, and I'm curious to see what comes out of it. As much fun as we had in some of these previous formats with using the cards like the Spirits Unleashed, I definitely won't be surprised to see the Siren Song have a real relevant impact on the format. It's just unfortunate for it. It's in the crappy faction that is Bilgewater. And so we'll say that we'll come out and cast some Powder Pandemoniums with this thing or something, but I'm interested to see what comes out of it. It's not a super high-powered card, but it's still very strong. I'm interested to see. Moving into the next piles, another Bilgewater card. We have the Deck Hunter, a 2/2 or a 1/3 cat for 2 mana comes into play. Manifests a follower that has a different subtype from your other allies in play. And this is the kind of way that I envisioned like that 8-cost spider getting on the board, right? You play the Deck Hunter on turn 6. You have this 8-cost dude that just turns up in your manifest, and you're like, cool, let's slap that guy down here in the end game. But this is probably going to be a very big format staple. Everything happening with this is quite powerful. It has an interesting stat line in 1/3, so it can come down, block Legion Saboteurs, block things like Conchologist, and still survive at the end of the day. And time has really shown us that these 2-cost units that come into play and generate another card, regardless of how good that card is, the card's playable. And so having a card like Deck Hunter that has a very relevant manifest, just in the general sense, this card's going to be strongly playable. And then in the sense that if the Zoo deck really pops off to where these subtypes really matter, then the Deck Hunter is going to be a key component to that deck as well. And so I think this is probably going to be one of the higher impact cards coming out of the set, even though it's kind of innocuous in nature, right? You never say at the end of the game, wow, I really just got smoked by that Deck Hunter, but it's a card that's most certainly going to be extremely relevant and all over the place, and it's going to kind of really form a lot of the deck building decisions, as things like Legion Saboteur aren't that good if you're facing down a ton of Deck Hunters. Up next, we have the Tufted Web Spinner. This is more along the lines as what I was talking about, my expectations from Spiders. This card, very powerful, 3/1 Fearsome for 2. It's a very strong stat line, very playable. And then if an ally has a different subtype when you play this, you give an enemy unit -2 attack for the round. And so it'll be kind of interesting to see where this can find use. If you're thinking immediately towards like the Mist Wraiths deck, Mist Wraiths don't carry a subtype, so it doesn't work there. But I feel like a lot of these formats have been very close to having a Shurima-based Fearsomes deck that works. And if that kind of thing starts to pop off, this can really take hold there. And so as we see Shurima show up with a lot of things like the cat archetypes coming out of Nidalee, and then things like Nasus, now a dog, really caring about giving your opponents neg attack and stuff, I can see there's starting to be the makings and the brewings of a deck there. And so whether or not this is a kind of new archetype for a Fearsomes deck, or if you're just playing a really aggressive Spiders deck that wants this cheap Spider keyworded Fearsome, the Web Spinner has quite a bit of relevance in the formats coming up. Up next, we have the Epic Scrapation, right? It's kind of a thermogenic beam that generates a unit, and so to play it, you spend all of your mana, you summon a Runaway Scrap Trap, and then its stats grow to the amount of mana you spent. The Runaway Scrap Trap, this 1/1 tech with the Brash keyword attached to it. And so I'm kind of interested to see if Brash can't really find more of a home. I feel like the Brash keyword popped up in the last set. It didn't get much usage because there wasn't a ton of support for it, but I love the concept of Brash in the sense that if we're just playing a game as normal, we're dealing damage to the opposing units, and as the opponent's units get weaker, just as the natural interactions of the game, the Brash ability starts to activate more and more. And so I do find a lot of interest in a bunch of these Brash cards turning up. Whether or not this style of card will actually see play, I don't know. It's the kind of card that I honestly haven't played a ton of things like Heimerdinger or Jace, and so I'm not certain how much they want this or how much better it is than something like Production Surge. But I wouldn't be surprised at all to see this at least start making its way as a one of into some decks. Or if you're playing something like Jace Lux and you want another relevant 6th cost spell, it can fit in there. And so Jace Lux has kind of the pick of the litter in terms of expensive cards, so they probably aren't super interested in this, but it is, a place to where it could fit in with the Mage Seekers. And so, up next, what I have as my biggest worry out of the set, the Sump Monument. And so I have, kind of major concerns as this card comes about. And so it's the 3-cost landmark. If your Nexus would take non-puff cap damage, your opponent puts 4 puff caps into your deck instead. And so this is a real kind of boon and bane to the lands of aggressive decks. You are technically going to be dealing more damage to your opponent as the game grinds on, but there is a very big deal between dealing that 20 damage to your opponent on turn 7 or dealing that damage to your opponent on turn 9, even though you did absolutely nothing between turn 7 and turn 9. And so as we have like a lot of these decks really kind of coming together, at least in the terms of Eternal, to where you're really just trying to drag your opponent down to 6 or 7 health, and then you blast them out with a blowback and double Mystic Shot or something, or a blowback and to get excited. The Sump Monument does tons of work in terms of really just neutering that strategy. If you say you're about to dome your opponent for 7 damage, but instead they take 3 damage each turn over the course of the next 3 turns, that's absolutely monumentally huge. It gives them so much time to come in and just pop off on their combos. If you want to imagine something like Karma Set, just playing this thing on turn 8 and then saying, cool, I'm guaranteed to hit turn 10 now with my Enlightened Karma. Things like that really start to scare me in terms of the aggressiveness of decks and what they're able, the amount of damage they're able and capable of doing. And so I hope I'm wrong with this one. This strikes me as something that I'm just absolutely going to hate, though, and it's going to be ultra frustrating to actually have to play against, being so strong against aggro decks, and then also tying in that RNG element to it, to where you might put 20 puff caps into your opposing deck to where they should be taking 2 damage a turn, but over the course of the next 3 turns they take 0, 1, and 1, and you just completely miss out on all that damage. This just strikes me as being an ultimate frustration to have to deal with, and it also worries me in the sense that there's not a ton of tuning that you can really do to this thing, right? And so updating it from like 3 to 5 mana, probably not that big of a deal. If you're just looking to drop it in the late game to kind of prolong your last 10 health, that price point isn't that big of a deal. And then upping the poison puff cap counter doesn't, I mean, it does scale up nicely for trying to beat the opposing decks, but I feel like my kind of initial impression with this card, to where it was like brewing in my head as being worrisome. And then the next thing that kind of scared me about this is that it puts 4 puff caps into the opposing deck instead of 3. And so what I mean by that is kind of synergistically throughout the course of time, in terms of all of the puff cap cards up to this point, they put 3 puff caps into the opposing deck. Now that we come across this one, why does it do 4 instead of 3? I ultimately worry that Riot, tried this thing out and it was a giant pain in the dick at 3. And then they're like, well, it's too good at 3. Let's bump it up to 4, right? And so, like, having little things like that kind of pop up really creep me out about this card. And I do ultimately worry about what this is able to do. And so this is my big worrier for the format. The other kind of thing that this card lets you do is it doesn't exist in the format right now, and it doesn't exist in the game right now to the best of my memory. But if you want to think in terms of cards, say like Necropotence and Magic, as to where you pay a life and draw a card, having these kind of trade-off style abilities to where you're dealing damage to yourself to gain some kind of effect, and then the Sump Monument kind of countering that to a degree, gives another kind of combo worry for this thing. And so that doesn't exist right now to the best of my knowledge. There's no unit in the game that just does damage to you in terms of giving you some kind of other effect. There's some of those like strike dragons and stuff, but if that thing ever comes about, you have to worry about the Sump Monument as well. And so, whew, I hope this is just a hot take, and this card is just absolutely unplayable. But again, I have giant worries about this thing. Up next, the Age of Dragons. As we were talking about the big 12 cost spells that you could be playing, Age of the Dragons, quite powerful. And so you look at the top 9 cards of your deck, draw every dragon in the top 9, reduce their cost to 0, and then you shuffle your deck. And so, of course, very powerful. Even if you only hit like 4 dragons out of this thing, you should be hitting well around like 25 or 30 cost of cards that you're going to be putting into play in the same turn, let alone if you manage to hit a Norellian Soul or something while you're taking your search through the top. And so I kind of look at the dragons as there being like Shyvana and Screeching Dragon at 4 and 5, and then if you want to get expensive beyond that, you can, but if you're playing like 3 Aurelian Souls and then just like 3 or 4 more expensive cards up in there, it's very easy to just get 30, 40 power out of the Age of Dragons. And so curious to see how this one plays out. It is quite expensive and doesn't immediately win you the game, but the same thing could be said for Feel the Rush. It took Feel the Rush a little bit of attacking to actually get that final damage in. And so Age of the Dragons, it's hard for me to evaluate in terms of Feel the Rush. Like, I don't even know if Aurelian Soul is still in Standard, but in terms of Eternal and using this with Aurelian Soul, most certainly a high-powered play, and it's very interesting that it's in Targon, so you don't have to play Freylord for that kind of effect anymore. And so really curious to see how this one goes. But this is the kind of thing I think you ought to be getting out of 12 mana, right? If the games are going to end on turn 9 or turn 10, then you should be getting a big, powerful effect out of that turn 9, spend all of your mana spell. Up next, the Star-Crossed Lovers. This one really surprised me as being a Targon card. I thought this was going to be another stupid Ionia card, as it's a 2/2 for 3 that on play, you recall an ally and give these Star-Crossed Lovers stats to that ally. And so it's kind of odd to me in the sense that when you're thinking of a card like Star-Crossed Lovers, it's very easy to think of it in terms of the stuff that Ionia did. And so playing like Kennen decks and Ari decks that have the dancing droplets and all of the recall effects in it, and you're getting to recall a unit to draw a card and stuff. Star-Crossed Lovers aren't really looking to do that. They're looking to be more involved with the Kale aspect of things. And so if you're able to play whatever the thing is that Elusives does that gives a unit in your hand 2/2 and another one 3/3, so you give the Star-Crossed Lovers +3/+3, you bounce your Esmuth and then you replay your Esmuth, and now the Esmuth gets +5/+5 or whatever, and gets to put more gems down. Like, this is what you're really looking to kind of pull off with the Star-Crossed Lovers. My issue and concern with it is that too slow? Is that too grindy? And time will tell with it. Strikes me as kind of an ability that's probably not terrible in Standard, but probably too slow for Eternal. And so I'm curious how this one plays out, as you're not really being like, oh boy, let's bounce a Consolologist, right? That doesn't sound like a really all-star game-winning kind of play, but it immediately strikes me as something that wants to be in those hand buff / stats matter kind of decks, and maybe use it to empower, not Mahari, that sounds terrible, but like that the 1 cost unit that gains lifesteal and stuff if it's empowered. That's the kind of place I see the lovers trying to hang out. All right, getting close to the end, Portal Scholar. And so Portal Scholar, very powerful. As we've seen, all of the portal generating cards are playable to some degree or not, right? They're not all as powerful as Nora or the draw a card thing, but a reasonably statted thing that shuffles in a portal and also starts granting impact to stuff. Very powerful, especially having this 4 points of health, making it a nice combat interactive bro, and also carrying the Yordle keyword. And so it has a lot going on for it. I wouldn't be surprised to see this thing have a ton of play in pretty much all of the Nora decks across the land, just because the summon a portal ability on a reasonably statted unit is quite strong. And then if you start to say, oh cool, well, I've got concurrent timelines and Banana Blaster in my deck, it even amps up to that degree as well. And so quite strong there. The other thing I'm kind of interested in with Bandle City is when they're going to hit that critical mass of impact, right? Having impact on one unit doesn't really do anything, right? You can come up with some strategies or some arguments if you're playing like the transform themes or plunder or something and you're using the impact to activate something else. But this kind of idea that, well, you know, Targon has elusives, and then you have overwhelms and Noxus, and then you have tough and big stats in Demacia. It seems like the keyword that Riot's really trying to push towards Bandle City is impact. And you see a lot of that out of Nora, you saw a lot of that out of Tristana, you saw a lot of it out of the Bandle City Gunners, but those are just like big one-shot impacts. We haven't really seen the emergence of this thing to where what happens if you just have 6 units on the board and they all have impact, right? And so regardless of how the outcome of the combat goes, you're getting to do 5, 6, 7 impact damage to your opponent, and they can't really do anything about it, right? And so as we see this Yordle and some other upcoming cards, I'm curious if Bandle City isn't getting to that kind of crest in the wave, if you will, the you know, little movement over the top to where they finally have enough impact for this keyword to really kind of come in and pop off and make interesting combats happen. And so I worry about that impact. It's a tough one in the sense that you can't really do anything about it, right? You could put a unit in front of an impact unit and then kill your unit off so the damage doesn't hit. But when you're facing down a board of 6 impact units and you're at 6 health, you're probably just dead, right? There's not a ton of ways to interact and stop that, as to where if it's overwhelm or something else, you can kind of do combat interesting things, right? You can play your +2/+2 combat trick and prevent some damage and win the combat, but if this unit's hitting, he's doing some kind of damage. And so I'm not sure if the just full on impact deck would feel toxic or not, but Bandle City's getting close. They're almost there. So up next, the Returno Wrench. I'm not entirely certain how I feel about this, and what I mean by that, I'm not certain what happens when your unit dies, if that counts as discarding the equipment. And it's easy to say, like, that's what you just said, but it's easy to understand that I play a discard card, I play a rummage, discard the Returno Wrench, it comes on the board, but I'm not certain the actual wording on what happens if your unit dies, if that counts as a discard or not. It's like, as this is kind of like a boomerang coming back to you, like I'm just thinking thematically in this, right? It's a boomerang thing that comes back to you. The text says stuff on it like about loops, and it pops right back when I need it. I think this thing comes back to your hand when the unit dies, even though that's not a last breath ability. And so I don't know. And so my thought on the Returno Wrench is, up to this point, every single card that has had a discard from hand to do something has been playable. Now, all of them haven't reached that level of like Vision and Jury Rig and Boom Baboon and Flame Chompers or whatever, but to some degree, even things like Scrappy Parts of Palooza has seen some play. Just anything with that discard ability attached to it has been a playable thing. And so in that mindset, you have to at least stop and say, okay, the Returno Wrench is going to be at least playable because all of these other discard things are playable. Now, having it discard to just give impact to a single unit, that sounds kind of shitty, right? That's not a very good ability, but if you can start coming up with ways to forge the wrench in your hand, or play Gift of the Hearthblood, or do something that gives your equipment some kind of bonus, then it does start to matter and does start to have some relevance. And if it's actually discarded when your unit dies, then that's super relevant, right? So it comes down on a random unit dies, womp, this thing comes back to hand, and then you can discard it to something else. I don't think that's how it works. I can't piece this together in my head with like all of the units having last breath, but the equipment not having last breath, but none of the equipment have last breath, and so maybe it is a discard. I don't entirely know, but that's where I kind of stand with this. If this ability does not return to your hand when the unit dies, then this will still probably be fringe playable. You'll find a way to make the impact relevant. If it does come back to your hand, this is going to be very powerful. Having recurring discardable stuff is incredibly strong. We've been seeing blowbacks all over the place, rummages all over the place. Having fuel to the fire for those at this very cheap cost, quite strong and exceptionally strong. And so we'll have to kind of wait on the ruling for that one. Lord knows I don't know how rules work in this stupid game, so we'll have to see what actually happens when an equipment happens to die, or goes away when a unit dies. And then last but not least, the Ferocious Fluffs, a 7-cost 6/6 with impact. when I'm summoned, grant other allies that have subtypes 1/1 and impact. And so, again, I'm not really impressed with this kind of card. Whenever you're spending 7 mana on a unit, it needs to do something really impactful and outright win you the game. And so you see the Ferocious Fluffs, you want to compare it to Albus Pharos, you want to compare it to the Leviathan, you want to compare it to, I know Riptide Rex costs 8, but you want to compare it to Riptide Rex. Those are all extremely high impact styles of units, to where just having this thing summon and give your other allies 1/1 and impact isn't that big of a deal. And so I am kind of curious about it, again, in the sense of Bandle City just being able to give all of your units impact, and you're just like, cool, I'm attacking with 10 impact FU. Like, there's nothing you can do about this combat. But in general, I don't think this card's going to be ultra playable. Its playableness is going to be turning up when it just gets manifested as a subtyped unit and comes down on the board because you wanted an expensive card. And so, exciting stuff. Those are the Heart of the Huntress cards we've talked about. Got us a half hour through there. Not going to be too much gameplay for today, but exciting to talk about these new cards as they come up. And so today, we're going to be playing Blue Gwen. This is directly from Rico Rex. Rico Rex, if you're not familiar with him, he hangs out at rank 1 on the EU servers quite a bit, plays absolutely nothing but Overwhelm. And so if you're wondering if things like Blue Gwen are powerful enough to do any kind of climbing, they absolutely are. He's had fantastic amounts of success with this deck. I think he's gotten up to 400 or 4,000 LP with it. I think what I was looking at the other day was if you go to Ranked Eternal past 7 days and then pick this deck up. What is this? It's Freylord and Shadow Isles. You're going to see the Blue Gwen deck pop up. And then if you search through the best players, you can see Rico Rex has 300 games with this deck in the past week at a 70% win rate. And so it's absolutely a relevant deck. And it's wild to me that Rico Rex has so many games under this deck. Like, if as you start to go back and like look at the stats of decks over the past week, like if you click on the meta stats, like Annie Jen has 3,000 matches. If Blue Sejuani had this, or Blue Gwen had the same number of matches, Rico Rex would have had 10% of the games played of the entirety of the most played deck. It's just absolutely insane to me that he's able to grind in so many games at such a high level and really power through like that. But that's really all of the testament to the strength of the deck that you need. I've made no changes here. I have no desire to kind of come in and edit this. I have played quite a few practice games, and I've been quite happy with the lists. Nothing has immediately stood out to me as things that I would want to change. But the big idea going on with this deck is you're using the Hallowed ability with your Overwhelm units. And so it has this big Overwhelm package between Ruthless Raider, Tusk Speaker, Scar Maiden Reaver, Ancient Yeti, and Sejuani. That ties in quite nicely with Hallowed, right? So if we have 3 of our Hallowed units die, our leftmost attacker gets +3 attack. If you make that on just a normal unit like the Boisterous Host, your opponent blocks and you don't really get any extra damage in. But if you're making those attacks with an Overwhelm unit, that Overwhelm is likely to carry through some of that additional damage. And so that is the kind of core idea behind this pairing of units, is that Hallowed and Overwhelm play quite nicely together, but there are a bunch of other really interesting things happening within this deck, and so it is quite capable of making good usage of Bone Club. Bone Club, another one that plays fantastically on any of these Overwhelm units, having a 7/5 Ruthless Raider, much better at overwhelming than a 3/1, but it also does stuff like immediately flip your Gwen. And so if you're attacking with, I'm sorry, it's one short, but she almost immediately flips as soon as you hit with the Bone Club. Very powerful there. And then it does tie in nicely with the likes of both the Atrocity and the Battle Fury. And so what you'll find at a lot of the end of your games is you might get in a big attack, you hit in with your Ancient Yeti, you drop the Battle Fury on it, your opponent says, LOL bust, you aren't getting me today, I have the Silence to stop your Yeti and all of that strength, and then you go into the next turn, you're able to just throw that unit away with Atrocity. And so lots of very interesting and powerful combos coming out of the units, lots of great synergies happening there, lots of late game power coming from the Bone Club and the Battle Furies and the Atrocity, just an all-around very well-rounded deck. And so that's it. That's what we're doing Battle with today. Let's go ahead and jump on in. All right. off we go. And so, yeah, if you're wondering about some of those card choices out there, as you see things like Elixir of Iron over Troll Chant, you see things like Strike Up the Band in place of Opulent Foyer. He's done a big chit chat about these things over on Twitter, and so you can go look up Rico Rex on Twitter and find those things if you're wanting the more in-depth reasoning as to why some of these card choices have been made. Again, I just defer to the master. He also does a lot of battling with Renekton Freylord, if that's something you're interested in. I think he hit rank 1 earlier in the season with that style of deck, and so there's a lot to be said about really kind of mastering one ability or one archetype or one kind of thing, and I think it's safe to say that he's mastered it wholeheartedly. So I'm just gonna pass here. I'm kind of interested in seeing what the opponent does. I'm wanting to get into like a Spirits Unleashed. I was wanting to see if he would play like another Saboteur, or if he would play another 2/1, and then we just wouldn't spend any mana for the next turn. But excuse me, with the addition of House Spider, it's kind of weak for us, and so I'm gonna go ahead and just add in the Tusk Speaker. We're not going to be able to play the Spirits Unleashed next turn, but I would like our Ruthless Raider to be surviving, and so I'm not necessarily, he wouldn't die to the thing, but he gets the extra health. The tough doesn't allow him to just fall to the Spirits Unleashed, and so with that turn, I was willing to attack or this turn I was willing to trade away our unit for the opponent's 2/2, and so I went ahead and attacked, and if he took the trade on his own, then that would be completely fine for us. Alright. Falling more and more behind, though. I mean, I think we can strike up the band. It does let us put a block in front of the Stone Stackers and get it down to 1 health. We're not doing a great job of getting built into the Spirits Unleashed, but it's what we really need for success here. So the opponent will want to play Poppy on this turn. I don't think, we can really challenge it. I think if we get to kill all of their units and then they play Poppy, that's a very good round for us. But we don't have anything else we can do with these plays, so he does get kind of free reign to take over the board. But if he only adds in 1 single big unit, that's pretty decent for us. Now, falling to 6 from Ziggs, not that awesome. We're very close to getting burned out here, but that was actually, quite a good round for us. Now, as far as it goes, I just don't want to be playing this Tusk Speaker. We're too close to dead. We can add in a bunch of units to the board, though. We can add our Ruthless Raider, both of our Hallowed units. Next turn, we can start to get this Scar Maiden Reaver on board. Seems like we're probably just dead, but keep at it.
A brief engagement, but a joyous one.
Another guest. Wonderful.
Maybe just dead. Alright, Sejuani. We can get you on board. We're not going to get enough to lethal through this turn anyways, and so I think we're safe to kind of go for it. Alright, fall into 1. That's where the true champions live, right? Let's see how it goes. Into Pokestick. GG. Alright, just a little bit too much for us in the early game. We didn't find a good blocker there early. But GG. On to the next one. So we've made our way up to Diamond on the secondary account. I'm looking to make one more video for the Glory in Navori. My kind of idea is, this is Saturday for me. This is our Saturday video. The video I make tomorrow on Sunday will be our last Glory in Navori video. Probably won't do anything on Monday, and then on Tuesday I'll talk about all of the spoiler cards, anything we might have missed, maybe kind of a recap video, and then we'll start in with the new set as soon as it's released on Wednesday. The only thing I will say is that we have to get some electrical work done on the house, and so I mean, it's just the way life goes. I'm certain that we're going to we're planning on having the work done on Monday and Tuesday, and so it'll most certainly just happen on Wednesday and really get in the way of get in the way of the new set being released. But
Wonderful.
it's what it is. But alright, as far as this hand goes, we had this reasonable start with both of our hallowed units. We shouldn't have to worry about them getting AoE'd. This deck doesn't play stuff like 1 damage AoE, whatever it's called, Caustic Riff. And so we don't have to worry about that. And then I like it as we get into our more important units like Tusk Speaker and Sejuani or whoever. We should have access to the Elixir of Iron at that point. And so these units, if they die, we still get the bonus in the future because of the hallowed ability. So we'd rather them die than someone like Tusk Speaker dying. All right, drink them up, bros. All the elixirs coming in. Oof. The messenger. Interesting. So we didn't talk about this. It is relevant in the times that you're trying to play your Tusk Speaker. As we do have Sejuani in hand and a Tusk Speaker on board, it's fair to mention that ideally you'll play your Tusk Speakers on your opponent's attack token. That's going to put you in a spot to where you get the additional level up onto Sejuani. So if you can, a lot of times you'll have the choice, and do I want to play Tusk Speaker or do I want to play Ruthless Raider? If it's your turn, you typically want to play the Ruthless Raider. If it's your opponent's turn, you typically want to do the Tusk Speaker. There's, of course, caveats and the like all the time, but in general, that's what you're going to find with this. All right. Viktor's on board. What do you got? Impact. Okay. Manageable so far. No removals come to our units. It's pretty interesting. Alright, what do you got now? Tough. So I'm pretty okay with sending a 3 Sisters at this Viktor, especially if we're blocking with the Phantom Butler. Like, as it is, the Butler should go up to 4 health. Or I'm sorry, go up to 5 health if we Fury of the North. And then it would be able to die to a removal spell, but get this Viktor off of the board. And then we'll still have our Tusk Speakers for next turn. Let's go in Lifesteal right out the gates, huh? Might find ourselves entombing this. The problem with Entomb is he gets the unit back, and when the unit comes back, it's going to have Lifesteal attached to it. And so the safer way to go about this is going to be to just flash freeze the Viktor. But if we were coming into the next turn and we're pretty confident that we are going to be able to finish this game off, then it is reasonable to just go for the Entomb. Sure. It's nasty. I guess we'll use our elixir. Should have just blocked with one of these other guys, huh? I felt like our unit was just more expendable, and now I don't want to expend it. And so maybe he wasn't as expendable as I gave him credit for. That's kind of a bummer for this upcoming turn, but we might get some crazy shenanigans happening here with this Sejuani, right? We're going to Sejuani. I want to hook in the Aphelios. One hit will trigger the Overwhelm, and then the next hit, or one hit will trigger the flip, the second hit will trigger the flash freeze thing to the opposing units. And so if we hook Aphelios way down to the right, we should ideally have him flash frozen, and then he's not going to be killing whatever gets to deal the damage to him. This is nasty.
I refuse. Time to dance.
Alright, well, let's send in the damages. Like we'll take him to 8. Getting close. Scary with this Viktor leveling up. The amount of good keywords. Increases and increases. Fury is not one we're really worried about, but if he hits a lifesteal, then we're definitely going to be shaking in our boots. It's also kind of a bummer when we have this bone club in hand, but we're staring down a graviton. So I don't really want to play the bone club until the last moment.
You are cute, and I want to kiss your tiny
Let's see what
face.
happens though. I think we do want to go ahead and just shut down this Viktor. We have plenty of cards to play next turn. Like I don't super care about being able to hook in this Viktor. We could have waited till next turn. Maybe that would have been better, but it's just a little. It's just like you're very close to dead if this Viktor gets to make a good attack this round. I guess we could have waited till he played like Hex Core upgrade or something, but this is a pretty scary spot to just be passing.
Embrace the night, Aphelios.
Alright, drop that Aphelios, but don't know what item you want. Standard. Standard Aphelios play. Let's regenerate on Viktor. Alright, well, we've done a good job of dodging all the challenging keywords, so that's kind of nice. Gravitum coming in. What can you pick off of that? Overwhelm or summon a unit?
I declare the waves fell.
Alright, let's see what we can do here. A little worried about this one. It's not looking too good. There's more bone clubs? I'm interested. It's just the downside to dropping Bone Club on the Phantom Butler is it doesn't, it just gets blocked by anything, whatever. So, I think we're stuck just trying to put the Bone Club onto Sejuani and hoping that nothing too bad happens to her. Play something dumb that doesn't matter, right? That's what we all want to see. Give the people what they want.
Severin.
Alright, well, I got my big unit. I hope that's enough. Hope that's enough. Goes Hex Core, interesting. So the unfortunate thing here is we're not going to get like the blocks we really want. We want to find a way to flash freeze the Viktor, but it's gotta have to come from a hit onto Sejuani. I mean, I think we're just stuck sending like this. He's gonna get the Viktor block onto someone down here on the left, but Sejuani will either A, go unblocked and still get the hit for 11, or B, Viktor will get in front of Sejuani and then hopefully be flash frozen. And so a lot of ways this can go wrong. I mean, if opponent just has a removal spell here, that's all they really need. Putting a block in front of 3 of our units and then the removal on to Ghastly Band. I guess this doesn't strike me as a particularly good spot for us, but I feel like we rushed our Sejuani to the board. There you go. Just play your removal spell. this is the easiest one of the day. Block, block, block. Here you go. Put your Aphelios in front of the 2/1. Put your Ballistic Bot in front of the Butler, and then just play your Mystic Shot on the Ghastly Band. Easy. Oh my gosh, is he gonna fuck this up? He's trying his hardest. Just literally trying his hardest. Okay. So we unfortunately don't get the Viktor off the board, even after this nonsense block just comes in. Okay. Is what it is. Maybe we'll find something for one of these upcoming turns. Atrocity's certainly at play now. But what a frustrating way to have it go. Phantom Butler, you're not gonna get the job done. Okay. I don't know. It's one of those spots to where I feel like if we were kind of playing up at the top end of Masters, that play would have felt a lot better. And then running down here, it's just like as you run into spots like that, I don't think that's an angle we're going to see a ton. So it's a weird sequence to have roll through. But nonetheless, into the next one, up against Taliyah Malphite. This is a deck that can go kind of either way. They have a lot of really high-powered stuff that can land down on our dudes. If they have one of the big Rock Bear draws, we don't have an easy time stopping it. So let's see how that goes. They should ideally not have tons of ways to interact with our Gwen. So she'll be powerful this game. What up, Chip? Haven't seen you in a while. Alright, so let's come in with the Phantom Butler. Again, we've already got 2 Sejuanis in hand, so if we do come across a way to deal damage to our opponent on their turn, like with the Tusk Speaker, it's going to be ideal. We're kind of far away from having this stuff go how we want, but let's see. This is going to be tough. Or have the direct answers to the Rock Bear Shepherds, and we need... Holy shit, he's attacking with it? I cannot block fast enough.
Take your coat.
Interesting.
Oh dear. Be back tomorrow.
Alright. Give us a shot. Give us a chance. I like having a chance. Let's see. Let's see what can go wrong with Gwen. She's just gonna be a 4/4 here, so there's a good chance she's just not statted enough to really deal with this board. And we do have a bit of an awkward draw this round. No current plays for the next turn. Alright, Phantom Butler, you're gonna have to do the work. Alright, what up, Taliyah? Let's go ahead and add in the blocker. Curious, he just doesn't even attack. I guess Taliyah's not flipped at this point, so that makes a bit of sense, but it gives us this opening for Sejuani to do a bit of work.
Bow to no one.
They are my people, and I am theirs.
Alright, so we only have Hallowed 1. That's a bit of a problem for Gwen, but we can, say, thread the needle, the Phantom Butler, into something and then get the quick attack for her. So I think we still want to be slamming in with everybody. And then we'll just thread the needle, allow our Phantom Butler into the Rock Bear. Oh, he's just not even gonna block? Okay. Could not have asked for better.
One stitch at a time, we'll make something totally new.
Alright, we're getting close. Maybe we'll get to do one of those sweet Battle Furies onto the flipped Gwen. Just have her nugget for a ton. Ain't nothing wrong with that. Seven mana Ancient Yetis aren't where we really want to be. I mean, we do have access to all of the Three Sisters and the Fury of the North. I don't feel as bad about taking damage from one of these. Taking the damage from both, it's not super ideal. But I mean, I don't think we're realistically going to do more next turn than just say open. Like, play the Ancient Yeti and then open. Then we can try and control his board from there. He's not going to be able to, like, damage us directly to face. So maybe these spells will be enough next turn. We can also look to entomb some of his blockers. So he puts a 5/5 in front of Sejuani. You can entomb the Rock Bear and then
Stand and fight.
just have all of the damage roll through.
I know the mountain.
So where are we at? We're only dealing 9 at the moment. It's looking pretty decent otherwise, though. Let's see. Okay with losing Sejuani at this point.
Wield your fury.
I think we want to just come in and kill all of his units. I'm gonna go flash freeze with this second one. Well, if we Fury of the North, we're really close to just getting the lethal, right? We only have 2 mana for next turn, but the atrocity's right there. Supernova. I dig it. I dig it.
A brief engagement, but a joyous one.
Rockhopper. Okay. So, I mean, we do still have to worry about, like, a Rite of Negation. I mean, with the way that this game's gone, it doesn't really strike me as a card that's going to be coming at us. Now with Malphite coming in, we're okay. So the things that would give us problems here would be like a Quicksand, giving our Atrocity unit -4 attack, or a Rite of Negation. But I think we're going to be able to Butler. He's going to tap out for Unstoppable Force, and then we'll just kill him with Atrocity. All right, we got there. I thought we were gonna shame Rico Rex with our play, come out of this thing with 0 wins, but able to snatch 1 from the jaws of defeat. Good stuff. All right, next battle. Whew. Thought we were going to have one of those. It feels terrible if we get less wins with this than we did with the Vladimir deck. we got 1 win with Vladimir, technically 2, because opponent disconnected and we counted that as a win. But I feel like as we're out here with a real deck, we gotta do a little better than that. All right, powerful enough start here with the curve of the strike up the band and the Gwen and the Tusk Speakers. I like it. So we're going to look to play the Tusk Speaker here on turn 2. This is the opposing attack token. Then on turn 3, we'll strike up the band, send it in, have the Hallows from that point forward.
Take the shot or lose the chance.
He thinks he's gonna zing us, doesn't he? But we're the ones doing the zinging.
No problem.
Nope. Get a little bit of that tempo back. It's not like a big soul-crushing play, right? We trade our 1 mana spell for his 3 mana, and then he gets to have the flare at the end of the day. But in terms of tempo and him not being on board anymore and trying to stop this stuff down, it goes a long way, stopping them from building back up.
Whoa, you sound great.
Can't wait for Seraphine to get nerfed. This is my thing with Seraphine, right? Is she should have 3 health, or her level 2 needs to just be knocked way up into the stratosphere, right? You shouldn't be able to play a 2 mana champion that then generates a card. She's a 5-stat 2-cost generator, right? So as most of the cards these days that cost 2 mana and generate a card only get 3 stats. That new cat does get 4. Good job for you, but it kind of is what it is there. But just her being able to come down, block something like Tusk Speaker, completely stop all of the damage, still be on board. She put the card in hand, And then on our next turn, on our next attack, he can just put Seraphine in front of Gwen. And then Seraphine continues to level up, right? She continues to grow, she continues to build. And then he can just play a second Seraphine on like turn 8 and have her do all the double damage stuff. It's just obnoxious, everything that she's able to do.
A brief engagement, but a joyous.
Haven't figured that out by now, huh? haven't figured that out. So yeah, we got Hallowed 4. We can attack with this 7 damage Gwen here, and he's like, cool, I'll just put Seraphine right in front. Easy mode. Ah, it's obnoxious. He's gonna have the flock too. Okay. Certainly still in it, but we've definitely been knocked down a notch. It's unfortunate being on this kind of big unit plan since this is a deck that plays disintegrates.
Think I got a beat. Pillage and burn.
Ooh. I hope the intern watched my video for the end of the Eternal season. Ran the notes up the flagpole. Gotta get Seraphine out of here. Alright, so who can we do here? Just dropping the Ancient Yeti doesn't feel that spectacular this turn. It's not horrible. I mean, we gotta get damage in at some point. It's like, ultimately, I worry if we add one of these lesser units to the board, it's just gonna be another, like, pirouette. Like, if we get our Butler pirouetted and our Ancient Yeti pirouetted, or if we got our Butler and our Reaver pirouetted, it would just be brutal.
Just when you thought you'd seen it all. I wasn't strong enough.
Alright, well, maybe we'll get to attack one day. Maybe. This game should be pretty close to done, but we can still come up with a big Battle Fury play or something and try and get out of this. Maybe he doesn't have a big collection of Plaza Guardians in hand since he gave up on his Legionnaire's charge to boost the Samira.
The party never ends.
You're just going, LOL Bust, you're talking crazy. You're talking crazy, aren't you? Why not just have everything at this point? Why not?
Men die.
This one's been obnoxious. Ready with the rally as well. Sure. Oh my god, let me concede. I don't want to watch the fucking video. Whew. God, I hate that card so much. Alright, on to the next one. It's fucking brutal. Alright, well, this is going to be our last one for the day. We're already at the 1 hour mark, and so typically cut it off right there, but I'd like to get in 5 games, you know? See what we can do. Hopefully we don't have to play nonsense like that if we're going to get an extra one in. I don't know. It's my thing with Seraphine is I don't understand it. If I know that when the rotation happened, and you're like, why is Action still in the game? Like, why does Action get to stick around? Like, the card's completely obnoxious. You've nerfed it to degrees and degrees, and you still let it stick around. It's not on theme with anything in the sets. He generates a landmark, sure, but he doesn't have like a deep theme attached to him that builds around anything that you're doing. And it's like, well, all the cards in Shurima suck, and if you don't have access to Action, then there's not really any real Shurima decks in the entirety of the standard format, so he has to stick around so they have cards that aren't shitty. And that was the extent as to why he got to stick around into the format. And I'm curious if something isn't like similar with Seraphine, if she was just like too new, or as the new big like legendary pack, there's supposed to be some kind of like fighting game coming out, and there's a lot of hype tied to it with the existing Runeterra characters, and then you know, losing out on that with like Seraphine being in the mix, she has to be around. Whatever, if that's the kind of thing. I just don't get, like, I get that she can stick around. It's just obnoxious to me that she hasn't been nerfed harder up to this point. And maybe it's in kind of the same space as to where when you look at PNZ, it doesn't have a lot going for it outside of the spells, right? Since that's what PNZ is really built on, is their trickiness with spells and the innovation that comes out of spells and creating and crafting things with your spells, and that doesn't really tie in with a lot of the champions. And so as you lose out on, say, Viktor, you don't have any like thematically good things in the faction, and it's like, well, that's why she's still here. And you know, if you nerf her too hard, then she's just not playable, and then the faction doesn't have anything. And I could see that being the case. It's just I don't know. Maybe people enjoy it. Maybe people enjoy that monstrosity. But as like we're reading the new spoilers and stuff, like Ionia gets a draw to that heals. Maybe these shitty control cards like that can be taken away now. All right, but I'll knock my bitching down to a minimum. We're up against Misfortune Swain. This is typically a more aggressively oriented Swain style of deck. That's why you saw the Legion Rearguard, the Legion Saboteurs coming in. I feel like we have a pretty reasonable shot of building up a better board before they're actually able to hit us with Swain, right? Swain can come down now. He's nowhere near flipping. But as we roll into our next attack, as long as we're not dead, we should be okay. So we have a reasonably high hallowed at this point. Very strong board of Overwhelms. We have these Elixir of Irons to give us the tempo and the winning of these combats. I think we're in pretty good shape here to be making those blocks. Interesting. Not sure what the angle is here. It's nothing. It's getting domed. Alright. We'll take it.
I'm one of the good guys, but not that good.
Well, we should be pretty good with Atrocity next turn. If he's gonna drop a Swain. Like, I guess that could be the thing. He wants to deal the damage to get in the Swain flip range. And then try and have the Swain AoE matter. That's all I can really understand with that play. We're safe now. Right to the face. And it says, no. I can't disintegrate. I only have this 2 mana. On Bust's list of cards that I put the Atrocity on my watch list of things that need to be just removed from Eternal or removed from the game. I don't know. I guess it's in theme with what Shadow Isles is capable of doing, kind of sacrifice for greater power or whatnot. But one of the notes I made with the Atrocity is like, there's been a card in Magic forever, like 20 years at least, called Fling, that does the exact same thing, except it only costs 2 mana instead of 7. But in Magic, it's much more challenging to actually get a gigantic unit on the board. Like, even the space of like 5 and 6 power, much more challenging to do. But being in the space to where you have, like, you know, that Ancient Yeti plus a Battle Fury to get 13, Nautilus for 13, Nasus for like 16, that space of just getting the instant OTK is very, very relevant and prevalent in Runeterra, to where it doesn't quite exist in Magic. But nonetheless, good set of games. We could pull this up, talk about it a little bit more. Again, we didn't have the greatest of showings today. We didn't get off to a real strong start, but I think combined, like I'm trying to think, I probably got like 6 or 7 games in earlier in the day. Only lost one of those, and so I was really doing some good climbing with it then. And of course, it's quite powerful. We put the Rico Rex information directly in front of you. The hundreds and hundreds of games that he's played with this thing and still maintaining that 70% win rate. Just an extremely powerful deck. that plays quite well into the entirety of the format. And so it's definitely a real deal, definitely something capable of helping you climb here at the end of the season, and something that I really like and enjoy. And so that is going to do it for us today. I hope everyone enjoyed the video. Hope you maybe learned a thing or two along the way and you had a good time watching. This is Bust and we thank you for being here.